it is really important that you are doing the mindset work, doing the limiting belief work, because in my experience as an entrepreneur, every single thing that's reflected back to me in my business is happening internally. So if I believe that I can't grow the podcast isn't going to grow. If I believe that I'm not worthy of large partnerships, we're not going to get large partnerships. So we all know that it's so much internal work as business leaders. And for me, that is also spirituality.
Hello, fabulous person. Beate Gillette here, the Growth Architect. Welcome back to the Business Growth Architect Show, where we bring you cutting-edge business strategies from some of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, business transformation experts, and visionaries who want to help you to scale your impact. Look for one tangible strategy that you can take back and implement right away. And now back to our guest. Welcome back, everyone. Today you are in for a out of this world special treat, I may say. This is your host, Beate Gillette, and this is the Business Growth Architect Show. Today I have a guest who's going to talk about a topic we don't really talk about that much, which is why I wanted her on the show. Welcome, Krista. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you so much. Because of our conversation before, I'm just all ready and warm to dig in. So I'm so grateful to be here.
Excellent. So please, will you tell our audience who you are and what makes you so unique and interesting?
Yeah. So I'm Krista. And, from the human side, I'm a host of a top 50 podcast that I do with my best friend. We started it 6 years ago when podcasting wasn't really a thing. We grew the podcast from our closet floors into a media brand and business that really supports people in their evolution. Our goal was to help ourselves feel less alone. And in the end, we ended up making our community feel less alone. And now I've really evolved into a spiritual teacher, more of a guide. I love to talk about topics like the law of one, topics like aliens and all of those things. I live in Los Angeles, and now I'm working on a tarot deck and app that I will be launching this year.
Oh, I love that very much so. So it's interesting because one of the things that really stuck out about why I wanted you on the business podcast is that a lot of times people think strategy and spirituality and business really don't even belong in the same sentence, let alone, connect in business. So if I say, what is strategy to you from your perspective? What do you say?
Yeah. So strategy for me is really intention and action. And I actually love this question. And I really love this topic because I'm someone that grew up in the corporate world. Actually, I was in the corporate world in consulting and digital marketing for 8 years before I was able to start the podcast. And that was so important to my spiritual journey because I was able to learn so much about the business world, about myself, about what I liked, about what I didn't like. But all of the principles and practices that I learned in the corporate world, I was able to apply to our business. And they've been instrumental in growing our mission, growing our reach, growing our brand, growing our imprint on the world. And without all the strategy that I was able to learn, without all the intention, and then the action we were able to take as a business, we wouldn't be able to support people in their spiritual evolution at all. So strategy has been incredibly important in my life. And I feel like it kind of gets the rep almost like sales. When you think about sales, you're like, oh, sales. And strategy is almost like, oh, strategy. Like, how could something so formless, how could the spirit, which is so mystical and infinite and beautiful, be distilled down to something that becomes more human in the strategy sense? But that's really where the magic lies. And that's really where we've been able to grow as much as we've grown, because there's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a lot of podcasts with women out there, especially two best friends. But what has made us different is really our ability to take all of our dreams and all of our visions and apply them into the world in a really powerful way. So strategy is all about it. I'm so such a fan of it. I have 4 houses in Capricorn, which is all about strategy. So it's like part of my blood.
I love that. And, I want to dive into this a little bit deeper because I think that, in our show and in my work as the growth architect, I do a lot about mindset work. But mindset work and spirituality, while they are related, are not exactly the same thing. So tell us about spirituality in addition to maybe mindset, because I think people get the concept of mindset. I got to be able to see that result that I want, but how does spirituality even tie into that?
Yeah, I think that's a powerful question. And I can even look back at my own journey with spirituality and even mindset work to see an example of the journey because I came into mindset work originally. I started to rewire my brain, and it was really more personal growth and self-development focused. I was someone that when I was in the corporate world, I had such bad anxiety and depression that I knew I really needed to work on my mindset if I wanted to heal. So I started to read books like The Secret, anything related to law of attraction, anything related to subconscious reprogramming and rewiring, so that I could really support myself in becoming a more positive, happy, productive, kind person. And as I started that journey and really worked to rewire my brain and become more positive, productive, happy, and healthy, I realized that with all this extra energy, with this clarity that I had, with this renewed sense of purpose in my life, I could turn that, to God. I could turn that to spirit. I could turn that to spirituality. And it went from mindset work to health and nutrition. And then it's just part of the natural evolution where you continue to seek. And that's what I think most people are. We're all seekers. We all want to live happy lives. We all want to live healthy lives. Well, as I sort of checked every box off where I felt like my mindset was good, I felt like my health was good, I felt like I was seeing results from all the work I was putting in, both internally and externally, then it just became like, what more is there? And the what more is there for me really became the spiritual journey. And spirituality for me is something that looks different for everyone. Someone could go to church and that could feel spiritual to them. I go to the park and I look at trees and that feels spiritual to me. It's really that moment of presence where you know that you're here for a reason and you know that there's magic that exists all around you. And it could be really structured. It could be really strategic with a morning routine, with prayer, with ritual, or it could be really free flowing and it could be really playful and fun. So spirituality is different for everyone, but I do believe that mindset work is really, really important for your spiritual practice because that's what really clears our mind of all the debris that we walk around with all day, which is the limiting beliefs, the negative self-talk, the ego, the things that really keep us separate from the capital S self, from an internal family systems perspective, or that keeps us separate from spirituality and the divine.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to unpack. So let me take some pointers here and make sure our audience understand this. I think spirituality a lot of times is we have this vision of somebody in a long, flowy dress, hippie-like, chanting, running around, you sort of being removed from the real life, living in a altered reality of some sort. But hearing you, spirituality is actually a rooting mechanism almost, right? Is something that helps us to plant ourselves firmly in the ground. I remember I was on a hike and very much like you, I like the outdoors to help me to get grounded. And one of the things is when you go on a hike, there comes a point where you get to the top and everything becomes very small below you. And so I had this, 12-year-old that, was running ahead of his family. And I'm like, hey, so you're the strongest one of your family. And he goes like, well, not really. And then we started having a conversation. I said to him, the reason I like this so much is because when you're up here, all your problems seem so insignificant because they're so small from the view from above. And he looked at me, he's 12 years old, and he looks at me and he says, I never thought about it like that. It really mounts the point that when you share the message of connection, right? Because spirituality is a connection to the divine, a connection to Mother Earth, a connection to other people in a different realm, that other people feel it too. And even a 12-year-old can in that instant connect to that so effortlessly, right? And it was a spiritual conversation, but was it really? So I love that about what you said, that we are the self-development led to a spiritual practice. So can we talk a little bit more maybe about your spiritual practice? Does a spiritual practice have to be rigid and does it have to be every day? Is there a particular formula that better than others? I already hear everybody asking.
Yeah, it's interesting because I kind of see both sides. So at this point in my life, I believe that, how we do the work is the work. So if I am waking up at 5 and I'm miserable and I'm unhappy and I'm making myself meditate and drink green juice and go to yoga and do all these things, then that's not going to lead me any closer to happiness, to wholeness, because the entire time I'm unhappy. If I'm living in the present moment, I want to be enjoying myself. I want to be embodied. I want to feel good. So if I'm not enjoying it the entire way there, that definitely is not the way. But I do believe, at the beginning of my journey, when I really had to get serious about what I wanted out of life and finding a purpose, I needed to create a structure. And that meant for me that I wasn't going to drink. that I was going to go to yoga, 3 times a week, that I was going to walk, that I was going to be mindful about what I was eating. And that structure really afforded me the clarity to make change in my life. So I do believe that by creating a structure or a set of goals for yourself to achieve or to follow a path on, that can be really, really helpful. But we can't make that dogma. You can't make it something where you're like, I have to wear the long flowy dress, like you said, to be spiritual. I have to look like this. I have to be like this. I have to pray this way. I have to experience, my life in this way. It should be really flexible, but you should be really fierce about what you want out of your life. And, from a spiritual perspective, I think going back to what you said previously, for me, spirituality is really an organizing principle in my life. We all have organizing principles in our lives, whether we know it consciously or subconsciously. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your work, maybe it's your relationships, maybe it's food, maybe it's clothes, maybe it's money, maybe it's getting famous on TikTok, whatever your organizing principle is. And I like to keep mine spirituality or my connection to self and to God, because that I know for me is something that's going to be really grounding and stable and something that I can always really count on.
So then what you're saying is that spirituality then is you almost can choose what your preferred connection is, or the vehicle of the connection, as long as it is a connection of some sort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because, if I was to say it had to be a certain way, then that's dogma. And to me, spirituality is outside of dogma. It's outside of religion. It's outside of someone else's perception of how I'm going to get to God or how I'm going to communicate with God. So everyone's is going to look different. There could be a farmer in Montana who lives with his sheep on the farm, and he's probably living a super spiritual life because he's living close to nature, in line with what his authentic truth is. He might be living in ritual rather than someone else that could be very religious, might not be as connected to the divine, even if they're doing all the dogmatic practices.
Yes. And I think that's really important to understand, is that when we think spirituality, obviously we're looking at the Dalai Lama and we look at some of the great spiritual masters of this world. That I don't think is achievable for most people unless you really dedicate your life's work to that. And it's, that becomes then a daily 24/7 practice. I think that spirituality for us in the context of the Business Growth Architect show is to raise awareness around that when you are in business and you are an entrepreneur and you are seeking to make an impact, which is what we do. We help visionaries and leaders to make an impact, that the aspect of spirituality is an important aspect to bring in, because if money is your God, that's the famous Princess Leia quote, right? If money is all you want, money shall be all you have. And money in itself doesn't make happy. And there's enough examples where people have enough money, but they don't, they look pretty miserable to me. So having said all of that, what's a favorite spiritual strategy you can share with our audience? If I can even ask the question that way.
Yes, I will tell you. I think what you were saying, I just want to kind of go back to what you were saying before I answer that. I want to answer that as well, but I just want to hit home for your audience, like the importance of spirituality in your business. And I know for myself that nothing really was successful or withstanding, or nothing really made me happy or whole in business or in my career until I found and married it with spirituality. And it doesn't have to be like God. It doesn't have to be spirituality. It means that I'm honoring myself and my unique gifts, and I'm living in purpose, and I'm really expressing to the world like my unique expression. I'm creating in a way that feels really good for me. And spirituality could just be you feel really good. And that could be you and your business feel really good about the work that you're doing. And if you feel good about the work that you're doing, you're going to be able to do it for a long time. You're going to be able to create a life that you love. You're going to be able to make really good money. And I think I didn't know that it was possible to live a life that was aligned and make really good money and be myself until I found this path that I'm on. And spirituality has been a really powerful guide for that. And for all your listeners that are entrepreneurs, that are creatives, that are people that are, building their own lives around things that they love, it is really important that you are doing the mindset work, doing the limiting belief work, because in my experience as an entrepreneur, every single thing that's reflected back to me in my business is happening internally. So if I believe that I can't grow the podcast isn't going to grow. If I believe that I'm not worthy of large partnerships, we're not going to get large partnerships. So we all know that it's so much internal work as business leaders. And for me, that is also spirituality. And so to answer your question, you said, what is the strategy for spirituality, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So the strategy for spirituality, I think, is really getting quiet. I think that's the most important thing, especially as business owners. We are all super busy. We're all probably personal growth focused. We all really want the most out of our lives. And I think to first really connect in with yourself and your soul and whatever connection, you want to have with the divine, it starts with really, really getting quiet. So from that quiet place, you will be able to create a strategy or plan for you that feels really good. Maybe that's nature. Maybe that's connecting with your kids more. Maybe that's eating really nourishing foods with no distractions. Maybe that is attending church if that feels good for you. Maybe that's reading your favorite spiritual text, or maybe that's reading your favorite book. It's going to look different for everyone else, but you have to really get quiet and listen to your soul, listen to that part of you that really wants to speak with you, that really wants to lead you on a really fulfilling life, and get clear on what your strategy for spirituality could be. Because I've had a lot of strategies. I've had really rigid strategies for a while. I've had really loose strategies for a while, and I've really just gone with the flow of whatever I was needing at that time, because at certain periods in my life, I really needed softness. I really needed grace, and I really needed more time. I really needed more rest. And there have been other times where I really needed like more fire, and I really needed more inspiration, and I needed more of that like ass kicking vibe to like get me to create what I needed to create in this world. So you're going to need something that's different for me, that's really unique to you at this period in your life. So by getting quiet, doing a week off of social media, doing no podcasts, no YouTube, no inspirational quotes, no books, you can get clear on what those next best steps are for you.
That is such a powerful statement. And again, I want to just take a moment to unpack that. The conception is a misconception that there is one particular model that's your model and will be your model for the rest of your life. So you were saying spirituality is fluid, and that in the quiet, I learn how to adjust because I'm listening to the flow. Now, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you know who I talk about, who believe that every minute of their day has to be productive. Mm-hmm. It's actually something that I've noticed more and more and more in a lot of the entrepreneur practices. Okay, you got to get up at 5. You got to do your morning spiritual practice, and you're going to have to do it every single day. And then you're going to have at 7:00, exactly at 7:00, because it's the best time to do whatever the green smoothie with all the additional things, because that's the best time for that stuff. And that's when the biorhythm does that. And then at 10:00, you're going to eat 10 almonds. And then at 1:00, you know what I mean? So
yes, I very much know what you mean.
So I sometimes look at how these tools now become prisons.
Yes.
And that's not spirituality to me. That's just replacing one addiction now with another addiction that you think is a little bit better. So tell us about what will you say to somebody? My routine is fitness, nutrition, getting up early. I have every routine on the planet. Why is it not working?
Yes. When you were speaking, I was nodding so hard because I can really relate to that. And I think that was me for a really long time when I was living in Los Angeles. I had moved from New York City to Los Angeles. I was working at a full-time job, and we were starting the podcast. So we worked full-time at our jobs for 2 years while we built the show until we were able to quit and take it full-time. And I remember one weekend I was running from a cryotherapy appointment to a sound bath. And then I had to go to get this, cleanse that I was doing. And I was so stressed out. I was like, I'm late for this, and I'm running to this, and I still have to get this, and I'm still doing this. And I was sitting outside of one of the appointments that I ended up being late for because of LA traffic and having to do all these things. And I was like, I'm so stressed out with the goal of being not stressed, with the goal of being better and healthier and happier. What am I doing? What am I doing adding all of these things to the list that I don't even really know if they even work for me? I don't even know if it's really even good for me to be doing all of these things. And so that was a really eye-opening moment for me, because I just kind of pulled back on doing all the things that I had been doing and adding everything to the list. But I had been someone that was gamifying my day for years. I would get up at 5, I would check my email for 30 minutes, work out for 45. On the way back, I'd check my Instagram DMs, and then I would be doing my email in the car. I'd be on calls during work. And that really helped me succeed with our podcast. I'm really grateful that I pushed myself during that time to do that. But I realized that I was wrecking my body and my adrenals, and I was just running off of adrenaline. So if we're going to be creating sustainable lives that we love, where we have spaciousness and ease and joy and flow, which I think is all things that people really want from their life, how can we build that into the process of building our lives? There are going to be periods when you're working more than others, but if you are completely living by this schedule and maxing yourself out the entire time, we're not guaranteed the next day. So if the entire time on the process to getting there, you are completely miserable and you're following this routine that you believe is going to get you there, what happens when we get there? Well, we push the goal a little bit further. We push the goalpost further. We move the carrot. And so your entire life, you're really just on this treadmill. And it's interesting because as an entrepreneur who was in the corporate world for so long, I noticed myself falling into the 9 to 5 patterns that I so badly wanted to escape, where I would be like, I'm still working 9 to 5. I'm still working 40 plus hours a week. I'm still doing all these things. And I'm like, but I left that. And I'm still falling into these rituals and these routines. And so we can be so hardwired to feel like we have to work 40 plus hours a week, to feel like we have to work 9 to 5 to be productive and all these things. So how can we take a curious and kind look at our lives and see how we can bring more playfulness and ease into our day, and know that we are safe if we take a day off, if we take an afternoon off, if we, have a lunch without any distractions. So there's all of that. And the foundation of that, just quickly, you have to be doing mindset work like you were talking about if you are going to be living a life of spaciousness and ease, because what was holding me back from living that was fear that I wasn't good enough to have a life of extra time, to have a life of a team that could support my business, to have a life where I wasn't working 3 jobs at a time to get what I deserved. And so we really have to always check in with our mindset. What were our parents doing? What were their beliefs? What is society telling us about our beliefs? And that will help us check in with where we're at so we can make sure we are acting as if we believe the future that we want is possible.
So much wisdom. I agree with you. I think that the misconception of the destination,
yes,
the achievement of the destination, it's a myth.
Yes.
And when you get older and you look back, you realize it's all the moments that are creating the richness and the fabric of the life that is worth living. And so that, I think, is a really good point for our audience to really take a moment and think about this. If you fill every single moment of your day, there is no room for anything to come in, because everything's occupied. So when you stretch that and you create space and, as you say, quiet, that's when the stuff comes in. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, that's energetics and manifestation, just creating the space for your manifestations to come in. I've realized that too, even when I've moved to bigger apartments or bigger spaces. I mean, my place isn't super big, but I've been able to attract more into my life when I've had more spaciousness, when I've had more ease. If you were to have your dream situation come through, maybe it was a TV show or something in your business that took a lot of your time, where would you fit it now if your schedule is completely packed the entire time? That manifestation cannot come through energetically into a packed calendar, into a packed space. And you don't even have any brain space to receive the manifestation of your dreams or the offer of your dreams in your business.
Powerful stuff. And so let me guess, I can hear a lot about this on your podcast. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about where can we find out more about this? Because I'm sure that there are listeners who go, I've never even thought about it like that. I need to check her out. Where should they go?
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. This was such a joy, and I love exploring these topics. And it just reminded me how passionate I am about business and spirituality and really just people living a life of their dreams, which is something that you obviously encourage people to do within business. So almost30.com, the podcast is called Almost 30. We talk about spirituality, sometimes entrepreneurship, and we really try and, make it a fun and playful approach. Almost 30 podcast on Instagram. And then you can find me on Instagram at It's Krista.
Wonderful. I really appreciate that. Yes. I want to do just a little bit of a summary because I think what we talked about today is so incredibly powerful. So in this episode, we talked about that spirituality is a strategy for not just success, but personal fulfillment and richness in life. Really, that a connection with the divine, and whatever the divine is and how you articulate that, that's entirely up to you. We're non-judgmental about how you get there, as long as it is something that fills you with joy or peace. And that we have to be always mindful that if we do too much and we fill every spot in our life, there's very little that come in. So sometimes the reduction of busyness is what allows the good stuff to come in. Have I summarized this properly?
Yes. I love a good summary. When you were talking, I'm like, God, I miss doing that. I need to do that again on interviews because we get so much information that it's so beautiful when you summarize. So yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, we'll make it super easy. Krista, it's been an absolute, for me, this has been a real treat because I love talking about things that other people don't really talk about when it comes to business. I used to read tarot cards, which is something that most people don't even know. And I use the Aleister Crowley a deck, which I love. And on the personal story, I had lost a lot of my spirituality after I sold my business because I thought I had made it. Yeah. And then I didn't need it anymore. So what would you say to somebody who now comes, and that's why I would love to end the show, who comes to you and says, yeah, but I'm already really successful. I don't really need all of that stuff. I have all the cars, the houses, the flipping, the properties. I have everything I need. How can we help them to live a richer life?
I guess, what made you come back to spirituality after you got it all?
That is the best question ever because I found myself angry.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out why.
Yes. You can be of the world, but not in the world. It's like, we all know that there's this something about life where we can have everything and we can always feel like there's something missing. And I felt like that when I've been really low, and I felt like that when I've been really high. And I think it's a part of our humanity and our human experience, to really seek and to want more and to want a connection. And I found that within spirituality. But, if you're successful and everything works and you feel really good and you feel like, your life is purposeful and you don't have that yearning or that seeking, then maybe spirituality in the life and the way you live it is great. But I always suggest for those people that find themselves angry or find themselves like something's missing, like, they did all the things, but they're still not happy. Spirituality is a great answer for that.
I like that. Something about life. And that's a wonderful way to end it. So if there is something about it and you're still seeking, check out Krista and the podcast Almost 30. Thank you so much for being here. This was really a treat for me. I really appreciate you. And that's it for us today. Thank you so much for listening and watching to our Business Growth Architect show, and stay tuned for more. And that's it for us today. Thank you for listening and watching the Business Growth Architect show. I enjoyed having you here. And for accountability, just take one of the strategies that you have heard, one thing that you can implement in your business immediately. Please leave comments. Don't forget to like and share this show. And if you have any questions about business, please put them in the comments. We are here for you. We're here to support you and help you to grow, build, and scale your own business. For more advice, please check out our website in the show notes below. Thank you again. This is Beate Gillette, the Growth Architect, and goodbye.